Hey everybody, my name is Bernard from Ucidity, and today I want to share a little bit more information about CRMs. And for this, I've invited a special guest. I'd like to welcome John Hill.
Hello everyone, nice to be on board.
And if you didn't already know, John Hill is my business partner at Ucidity. So we're very thankful for him to come along and share a little bit of insight with us today on a platform called Insightly. And Insightly is a CRM platform, but I won't give you too many details. I'll leave it up to John to share some more. So I'll throw it back to you, John, and we'll just kick it off. Give us a bit of insight of what Insightly is, what are some of the best features, and what do you think makes Insightly unique to other platforms out there on the market?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the reasons why I like Insightly, partly it's founded by an Australian, so it's always a positive. I think one of the biggest things is it's really easy to use out of the box. So I would say it's probably the closest thing to HubSpot without getting HubSpot. It's quite easy to use. I think another thing I like about it is it's actually quite flexible. One of the if you jump into like the back end area of the CRM, you can actually set up the screens exactly how you want them to look. And some people might be like, yeah, whatever. But if you think about it, someone who's say in the accounting team, they're going to want to see different fields when they look at a contact to say someone who's in the sales team. They're going to have a different view of looking at data. So that's what I mean by it's quite flexible as to what it can look like. It's got inbuilt automation, which a lot of CRMs don't. A lot of CRMs you've got to pay through the nose for. And you can actually set up fields however you want them to be set up. So yeah, definitely the flexibility is a big positive. Another thing about Insightly is that it has a very strong reporting feature. Same thing with a lot of other CRMs, you've got to pay through the nose for any sort of extra reporting. And just out of the box, Insightly just allows you to report on whatever you want in the data within the CRM, which I think is fantastic, especially if you're at a management level, or if you're a salesperson, you can sort of fiddle around a bit and have your dashboard looking exactly how you want it to look in the morning. So
yeah, and then you can track and measure and then be able to like adjust and improve things because of that visibility over all those different elements in the business.
Yep.
Yeah.
And another one of the biggest benefits with Insightly is the fact that it's got a project management layer built in. So for a lot of businesses, they struggle, they get the CRM, and then they've got to search around for a project management tool. And there's great ones out there, like Asana and all those sort of ones, Trello and all that. But if you're after some fairly basic project management where someone comes through your pipeline, they convert from a sales opportunity straight into a customer, and you just have a list of tasks that always happen whenever someone comes on board and during the delivery process, then Insightly is fantastic for that. So you can just basically tick and flick. Managers can jump into the CRM and find out what hasn't been done, what has been done. And you can set up every morning, you can just come into Insightly and there's your task list for the day. So it's really, really good for simpler sort of projects.
Yeah, cool. And then it's always tied back to the customer, which is also a great little integration there. Awesome. So with all that said, are there some common myths that float around about Insightly?
Yeah, I think a common myth is, even when I was coming on board with Insightly, that it's like a cheap and nasty alternative to a full-blown CRM. Yeah. Now, I think, unfortunately, to Insightly's own detriment, they haven't marketed themselves as well as what they could. So there's this whole sort of, feel around Insightly that it's like an amateur CRM, but it's actually quite we've got a lot of clients using it. And I was using it for about 2 years before I jumped back into HubSpot, and I still like it. Whenever they come out with a review every quarter with what's new in Insightly, there's some really good stuff out there. So I'd encourage everyone to at least give it a go if you haven't used a CRM before. It's a really good starting point.
Nice, fantastic. Well, in saying that, then who is the solution best tailored for?
Yeah, look, businesses that are involved in like consulting or some sort of service-based businesses, it's really, really good for that. As an example, we see a lot of training organizations use it a lot. So typically with a training organization, you might be reaching out to some prospects. They come through your pipeline. Eventually they're like, yep, we're going to bring our team on board for the face-to-face training or online training. And then after that, typically what happens is there's a tick and flick sheet. So something like you've got to confirm the venue, you've got to confirm catering. There's this whole list of items that take place. And that's great for that project management layer. So people just switch over. People know in the training team know exactly what they've got to do in order to meet the needs for the client. And look, I think saying that as well, I'll put it out there that Insightly is good for a business that's about 1 to 5 employees. If you've got and 1 to 5 employees using Insightly, if you've got a larger team, my feeling is that there's other CRMs that will be better bang for dollar.
Yeah.
So
cool.
typically it's going to be consulting service based where you've got sort of a tick and flick, and as I said, training organizations as well.
Yeah, and of course, in saying that, like there are bigger and smaller businesses that are using it, but that's kind of like its golden spot. It kind of works for those more effective, more consolidated teams to be able to then easily transfer information and automate those processes. Awesome. So then, who would the solution not be a great fit for? Which you kind of answered a little bit there, but could you dive into that with a little bit more detail?
Yeah, look, definitely businesses who are wanting an all singing, all dancing marketing engine, it's not for them. Insightly does offer a marketing platform which got released last year. On paper, it does pretty similar things to, say, a HubSpot Professional, and it's a very, very similar price. So, look, my preference would be to, if you're looking at the marketing side, definitely look at something like ActiveCampaign or HubSpot if you're sort of that larger, small to middle tier. And definitely if you are medium to enterprise, it's going to get really expensive really quickly. Another thing, unfortunately, to Insightly's detriment is they don't really offer bulk discounts when you're buying licenses. So I wish that, like, if they would change that, they'd probably grab a whole new share of the market.
Yeah, so it's like a per head cost, but there isn't like, and once you're over 30 people, then it's a different rate from when you're over 50 people and then over 100 people. Yeah,
it's basically like
so that cost can climb like super high once your team starts to really grow.
As basically it's 49 US, which is roughly 100 Australian per user per month. So you've got 10 users. I mean, that's $1,000. Yeah,
that's pretty hefty to take on.
Yes.
Cool. So then, what are some of the systems that it integrates with? Obviously, there's probably a bunch of them, but what are some of the more typical integrations that people would see?
Yeah, look, a lot of people integrate it with MailChimp because they need some sort of EDM component or email component. So it does integrate fairly well with that. You can basically push people out to a list and suck people in from a list.
Cool.
And it's got a couple of integrations with like an accounting platform, so either Xero or QuickBooks Online. And it's relatively basic, but at least when you're looking at a contact field, you can see what invoices they've paid and whatnot as well.
Nice.
I think one of the stronger, it has a very, very strong API if you go into coding land, but like me,
on the weekends.
But as a result, it integrates with Zapier or Zapier, however you want to pronounce it. And then typically what will happen is once it's in Zapier, you can sort of do whatever you want and they'll talk back and forth with each other.
Wow.
Now, I'll also say it does have, because of the automation as well, you can actually get it to talk to other systems if you do like a little bit of programming. So you've got to have someone a little bit more technical, but it can actually do a lot. It's just that a lot don't really ever get that deep into it.
Yeah. So like off the shelf, it's quite robust, but then for those real detailed automations or plugins or connections to other apps, it's possible with the right kind of knowledge, essentially, to make it even more broad. Awesome. So then,
Actually, it integrates with email systems as well, which we're a lot do these days. But basically, it'll give you a list of any emails that your clients have been sending you.
yeah, and tie it back to that contact's profile.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Well then, okay, from that perspective, and you mentioned a little bit about this before, what is the ballpark pricing for the platform? What are the kind of like the consulting fees if somebody wanted to come on? What should somebody be considering? And then what's the ROI that comes out the other end? You know, what are the benefits to business that people really see?
Yeah, look, so I'll start with the pricing. Typically, people get the Pro package, which is about $49 per user per month. That's if you pay annually. So I think it's around about $59 if you pay monthly.
Yeah.
And it says per user. So it's roughly budget for about $100 per user. There is a super free, there's a free version. It's like for someone who's a sole trader who's running their own business and getting their feet wet with a CRM, you can use like a free trial version, which you can actually use as a full CRM.
Yep.
But that's the pricing. Look, the biggest ROI we find for a lot of businesses is a saving of time. Because for a lot of them, it's the first time they've ever used a CRM before. There are levels of automation and there's levels of reporting, so they can really start to extract data out of their business. As an example, you might your sales team might want to know what their conversion rate is. So you can just pull up a really quick dashboard to find out how many of our sales opportunities actually convert into clients. Yeah, it's probably been able to get up and run pretty quickly and save a whole bulk of time is a big one.
Awesome. And then what about from a consulting perspective, if somebody needed help or guidance with that, what kind of cost could somebody be looking at essentially to bring on an Insightly consultant?
Yeah, look, I guess if you're a bit more serious around getting Insightly set up, then typically it's going to be about 2 to 3K is about a good sort of budget to start off with. What we typically find once we jump into I guess the way it typically works is people will use Insightly for 6 to 12 months. They'll typically contact us and say, hey, we want to make sure it's set up correctly. And then typically we'll jump in and it's about a 2 to 3K to set up. And that's once people have a good idea about what their processes are, a good idea about what data they want to store. If you're coming off the cuff, we do have like a standard setup. It's like every business we ever touch with the CRM, these are like the fields we set up, these are the reports we set up, and everyone uses them. So it's almost out of the box solution. And then there's everything that's specific to your business on top.
Cool. So then what's the rollout time around that? How long does it take to get implemented and up and running?
Yeah, look, I think one of the things I love about Insightly is the fact that because it is fairly simple, a lot of businesses can get up and running straight away. They don't really have to fork out anything, especially, as I said, if you're a sole trader. If you're a larger business, typically what we want to see is some sort of planning process where you are planning your processes. So typically the one that's going to take the most time, you'd start with that first, where you expect the one that's most complicated, start with that first. That'll give you some ROI. And then once you get a feel for that, you can then start to build on the rollout. But typically, if we're coming in for, say, a consulting job, it's typically about 4 to 6 weeks is about normal. That's just back and forth with people testing, refining, whatnot.
Yeah, getting the right fields, right automations, all that kind of stuff happening, especially if it's somebody's first time and they don't really have a lot of familiarity, getting used to those like systems and processes. And especially when you come up with it like one day in the meeting, and then you actually get to start using it and you're like, oh, actually, I'd like it to do it like this, or I'd like it to do it like that. Yeah, so those all come up after a little bit of time. You're not going to instantly think of the perfect system from the first day you put in a CRM.
That's sort of typically what we find. Like because we run Insightly training courses as well, and what we typically find is we'll go on site, people will learn sort of the proper way to use Insightly, and they're like, oh wow, we should set up all these systems off the side. So yeah, it's sort of once you get in there, you sort of find out what you can do.
Yeah.
Is what.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, from there, who would be some great people for you to be connected to chat further on an Insightly product and integrating that into their systems?
Yeah, look, typically we love having a chat with smaller businesses who want to get their feet wet with the CRM. Typically either they're using a spreadsheet or post-it notes everywhere, or they're relying on their memory. Insightly is a really, really good way to get started with the CRM. It's pretty simple. Cool. We've actually got a course online as well, which is like a getting started with Insightly, which just takes you through the absolute basics of how to use Insightly. So that's sort of one side. The other side is I think business coaches or business consultants. If they're coming across businesses who are just wasting time, forgetting to follow up with sales. Their team don't know who's who in the zoo or whose phone number is what. Those they're good conversations for us to have as well, to get some sort of CRM in the door. And with Insightly, once you've got your feet wet with something like Insightly, you can then grow into something larger like ActiveCampaign or HubSpot or Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics as well. Yeah. Whatever path is better for you.
Yeah, and it essentially allows them to get all their data organized so that when they're ready to go, they can just move on to that more enterprise type platform without the hurdles of having to get their data together and all those little bits and pieces. Those are already taken care of if they've been using Insightly for so long and built those foundations. Cool. That was really, really interesting. I think what's really impressive from what's come from that is that Insightly is a great way to get started. It's a great way to get those foundations right, test, measure, understand what's happening in your business, and it gives you an avenue to keep growing the business. And from there, you then see what comes. Whether you then move up to an enterprise, you extend your use of Insightly and how that works for your business. It's just a great opportunity to get in the game, really.
Yeah, and as I was saying, like it's built in a way that with a little bit of training, you can sort of jump in and configure it how you want. As an example, I know from experience, something like a Salesforce, you got to get a Salesforce consultant to come in and configure it for you, and that's great once you've understood how your business works. But if you're a smaller business, sometimes you just want to build it as you go, and this is a great platform for it.
Awesome, man. That is a perfect way of wrapping that up. John, man, thank you very much for sharing all this knowledge, all these insights. Insightly.
Insights, I know. That's why they named it that way. They're very cheaty.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you very much. Obviously, everybody who is listening, we've got a huge series of videos on a bunch of different CRMs, so please stay tuned, like, follow, and comment. We are highly active, so we will respond to your comments if you have any questions about Insightly or any other CRM, and catch you on the next video. Thanks a lot, everyone.
See ya.
See you later.